Good afternoon. I'm happy to welcome Professor Deryugina from Illinois University. Thank you for being here today. ICEUR is currently interviewing international experts on Russia and Ukraine in order to find out more about the backgrounds and implications of the current war. You are an associate professor of finance at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
That is correct.
Thank you. We all reading news every day. Russia is invading Ukraine and intense fighting is being reported at the moment. And most Western governments have condemned the Russian actions. But do you think that the economic sanctions and measures they have taken work as intended?
Yes, I would say that to a large extent, the sanctions and restrictions imposed on Russia and certain citizens of Russia have had the intended effect. Now, they obviously, the Western countries haven't done all they could sanction-wise, but the sanctions that they have imposed have created a tremendous cost for the Russian economy. Russian firms, the Russian stock market, even the Russian central bank. So the economic pain that's been inflicted on Russia is quite significant.
Thank you. Well, you have reached out to a large number of Russian academics, writing them a letter in order to find out how they are thinking about the situation in Ukraine. What are your principal findings and how reliable is the data generated?
So I would say this was not an academic project, right? I want to be very clear that the goal was not to study Russian viewpoints. The goal was really to do an outreach campaign to encourage Russian academics or academics in Russia to stand up against the war in Ukraine, either overtly or if they were concerned about their safety, kind of more covertly. And what I realized is that a non-trivial share of Russian academics actually do support the war. And again, I should say academics in Russia, right? So there are Russian academics elsewhere. They were not the target of this outreach effort. But among academics in Russia, I've gotten quite a few responses basically repeating Putin's line about this being a special military operation to rid Ukraine of Nazis, which is just completely fabricated. And it was quite shocking to get those responses from intellectuals, many of whom are on the international research scene. The contact emails that I had gathered came from English language journals, generally very good academic journals. So these are not isolated academics, who aren't communicating with the world scientific community. And I would say this is not a quantitative assessment because most emails I did not get a reply, and there were some sympathetic replies as well. So really the conclusion is more of a qualitative one that the type of propaganda that's being pushed by the Russian government right now is affecting not just, kind of the typical Russian citizen, but also highly educated academics in Russia.
Thank you. These days, it's more and more difficult to communicate with Russian institutions because, well, many Western media organizations and Russian independent news sources are either closing or leaving the country. Social media is as well being restricted. Can the government effectively crack down on the protest movement, which we have seen in several Russian cities in the last days?
They seem to be cracking down quite effectively. We are still seeing protests, and I really applaud the brave Russians who are objectively risking a lot by going into the streets. I do think that some of them are so brave that some protests will continue, but the fact is that the more people are arrested and the more severe measures the Russian government takes, eventually people will not go either because they are fearful or because they think it will not make a difference. So I'm not going to be so pessimistic as to say that, yes, definitely protests will not grow beyond where they are now. But I have a hard time seeing that, because when you eliminate other news sources, as you have said, when you restrict access to social media, and most importantly, when you jail protesters and when you pass laws enabling you to put people in prison for a really long time, that does deter people. I'd like to think I would be brave enough to take to the streets of Russia, but I'm not sure. And I think many of us would be rightly scared of a government like that.
Not only media, many Western private companies and universities are currently cutting ties with the Russian partners. How will these developments affect Russia in short term and long term?
I think the long-term effects on Russia are going to be quite severe. In the short term, in terms of research and development, even there will be some consequences. For example, Russia will find it harder to get equipment. Many international collaborations will be severed, and these will be felt in the short term as well. In the long term, Russia perhaps can adjust to some extent by, starting to manufacture more things at home. And in fact, that will probably benefit some individuals, who own companies within Russia. But the overall effect, I think, on Russia will be quite catastrophic. I don't see, given that there's good evidence now that Russia is committing war crimes in Ukraine, I don't see the rest of the world just letting Russia back into the world scene simply for retreating. It's kind of too late for that. I think it would require a regime change in Russia. So as long as the current regime is in power, I think the Russian scientific community will suffer. I think Russian industry and enterprise will suffer as well. A good example is Boeing and Airbus no longer providing spare airplane parts for Russian airplanes. That's, in the short run, the Russian aviation industry will be okay. In the longer run, they will manufacture some of these things themselves, perhaps. But given the level of technical expertise required, I have a hard time seeing them do it effectively enough to offset the entire impact of these actions.
Thank you very much. Is there any additional point you would like to discuss in regards to the situation in Ukraine?
I don't think so. I think this is obviously still a very rapidly evolving situation, and I myself am trying to keep up the best I can, but at this point, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Deryugina, for your time and sharing your point of view with us today.
Thank you very much.